שלום לכולכם, זה באמת תענוג גדול וכבוד בשבילי להיות פה איתכם, עם כולכם, יזמים, משקיעים, חברים, משפחה. I'd like to acknowledge the presence of my wife, Sharon Harel, here. Sharon is more famous than I am for being the producer of Halakha and Sha'at Ne'ilah about the Yom Kippur War, which you've probably seen. Our daughter, Tamara Harel Cohen, who is the co-founder of Rise Up, an impact fintech venture. And our son, Johnny Harel Cohen, our nephew, Tal Kainan, who lead Dynamic Loop Capital, our impact venture company here in Israel. And it's a very important day for me because this marks the publication in its 10th language of impact in Hebrew, 10 out of 12 languages. And when I first started to invest in Israel, 29 years ago, there was no tech here. There was nothing. To raise $40 million from institutional investors, we needed a guarantee, wait for it, from the American government that the investors would not lose their money. And that's how the first institutional investors came to Israel. Now, why did I, as the leader of Apex at that time, and in those days, Apex probably managed $1 billion or so. Today, it manages $75 billion. Why, at that stage, did I feel it was important to come to Israel? Well, obviously, I'm Jewish. I'm a refugee from an Arab country. Israel is very important for the Jewish people and very important for me. But beyond that, I could sense that something was changing here. I could sense the potential of young entrepreneurs using technology to do something really meaningful. Sure, to make money along the way, but to do something to build the country as well. And this is what has so brilliantly been achieved in just one generation, from nothing to Startup Nation. And I want to tell you that I feel the same way today about the impact revolution as I did about the tech revolution then. And I want to thank Leonid Nevzin and Irina, his daughter, for all the fantastic work that they have been doing to improve our values and our democracy. And I want to thank Itamar for his fantastic speech, which is a wake-up call for us all. We've all seen the figures and the pictures. Destruction of the planet is on the cards. Our societies are being split apart by gaps between rich and poor that are greater than they were in 1929, before the Wall Street crash and the Great Depression. And Vanessa showed us that some things are changing. They haven't changed all the way yet, but they're changing. Something is afoot, something similar to the beginning of the tech revolution. What drove the tech revolution, and I was lucky to be in my mid-20s in the United States at business school, when the microchip had been invented, and people could sense that this was going to change the world. Most people thought it would change the computer industry only. But some people, including myself, could see that this combination of entrepreneurship and technological innovation would enable the young entrepreneurs, like many of you in the room today, to overtake the leaders in 100-year-old industries. Today, we have a similar confluence building on entrepreneurship and innovation and the venture capital industry that didn't exist in those days. Do you know what the size of a venture capital fund was when I started? $2.5 million. The latest Apex fund, $14 billion. Okay? Today, venture capital and private equity has gone from nothing to being nearly a $10 trillion field. The same thing is happening now with impact. Now, what is in the air today that has attracted all of you here? One is this feeling of fear that we really are capable of destroying our planet and society, but also a feeling of hope that the younger generation has changed values in comparison with the generations that came immediately before it. I like to think that my generation, I was at Oxford in the 60s, was also an idealistic generation, like Gen Y and Gen Z. It was a generation of flower power and anti-nuclear. But the generations in between have been materialistic, focused on profit. And we've seen some of the examples of the huge accumulation of profit which innovation and advances in finance have made possible. And today there are three major forces that are working in our favor. The first is this change in values. It started probably 10 or 15 years ago with people like you here who refused to buy the products of companies that were doing harm or to work for them. The harm could be social or it could be environmental. It became noticed by investors who began to realize that these changing values held threats and opportunities for the companies in which they invest. And so we saw the birth of the ESG movement, environmental, social, and governance investing. When I led the G8 task force on impact investment 8 years ago, ESG was at $13 billion. Today, what's the number? $13 trillion. Today, over $40 trillion. $40 trillion of money, half of all professionally managed money in the world, is going now to deliver impact as well as profit, to deliver improvement as well as profit. And that has never been seen in the financial world before. It's been inspired in part by the leadership of the impact movement. 12 years ago, I was proud, as part of social finance, which I co-founded in the basement of my office in London. In London, startups don't start in garages like Silicon Valley, they start in basements. Social finance, in 2010, invented the first security in the history of the world, which delivered a financial return according to a social improvement. That idea of the social impact bond has now inspired sustainability-linked bonds and loans of $1 trillion across the world. $1 trillion across the world. So the change in values is leading investors now to say we will lend money to companies and we will reduce the interest we require from them if they achieve a social or environmental target. Never been seen before. So that's the first massive force supporting us all. The second force is leaps in technology. The invention of the microchip brought us the PC, the cellular phone, and many other things, and made possible the development of the internet. Artificial intelligence, machine learning, augmented reality, the genome and computing coming together so powerfully transform our ability to deliver impact in ways that humanity could never previously contemplate. And we're beginning to see here in Israel and everywhere else across the world now, young entrepreneurs seeking to create hugely valuable new ventures that also improve the lives of people and bring solutions to our great climate challenges. Now, Elon Musk is not the most popular person in the world, and in many ways he exemplifies the type of leader that we want to leave behind. But Tesla is the first company to have optimized risk, return, and impact to build a $1 trillion success. Elon Musk didn't enter the automobile industry because he hoped to be able to compete with automobile companies with a combustion engine. He entered it because he wanted to shift the whole of the automobile industry away from pollution. And he has achieved that. And now we see ventures here in Israel and elsewhere that are seeking to do the same thing. The impact unicorn is a venture that becomes worth $1 billion and improves the lives of 1 billion people. And people don't understand that it's actually a better way to invest. It's the way to deliver superior returns today. Because when you invest with an impact lens, you reduce the risk that governments are going to regulate you and tax you, that talent is going to move away from you because it finds distasteful the harm that you create, that investors will leave you for the same reason. But at the same time, when you look at a venture through an impact lens as an entrepreneur, you ask yourself a question which you normally wouldn't have asked, and it opens the door to great new opportunities. And that question is, how can my technology help the greatest number of people in the world? And I want to use the example of Orcam. How many of you have heard of Orcam? About a third of you. Orcam is an Israeli company led by entrepreneurs who sold their business Mobileye to Intel for $15 billion. The most successful Israeli entrepreneurs ever. The aunt of Amnon Shashua was going blind. So she asked Amnon, who, as many of you know, is a professor at the Hebrew University, you're a bright guy, you've been working on vision for driverless cars, why don't you help me, I'm going blind. So he used his technology to create a company which enables the blind to see. A little fixture hangs on the side of the spectacles and whispers into the ear of the wearer, beautifully read, the page of the book the person is holding, or the newspaper, or the envelope in their hand. It recognizes up to 300 people who've previously been inputted in it. So you'd say, wow, what a fantastic impact venture. 35 million people in the world, 200 who are blind, 250 million who are visually impaired. What's that going to do for their lives? And the answer is, of course, transform them, and it's already doing so. But if you're an impact entrepreneur and you ask the question I asked, how can this technology help the greatest number of people in the world, you get a very surprising answer. And it exposes the way in which impact creates opportunity. Because the answer is, what if you provided these spectacles to the 800 million illiterate adults in the world? What would that do for their lives, for their livelihoods, for their economies, or even for the world economy to bring 800 million people from being unable to read to reading, in inverted commas? And so when you think like an impact entrepreneur, you access much bigger markets with huge latent demand, often with different business models. And so you see companies in Israel now like Master School, teaching, training people, enabling them to earn more as coders or in other areas of professional endeavor, and to pay for their education after they have received it and got into a job. We see technology coming into telehealth. We see it coming into fintech, of course, into clean energy. In short, you are living at a time of disruption similar to the one that I was a 26-year-old in. You're living at a time when impact and technology coming together are going to disrupt every business model which is creating negative impact today and support the winners of the future, which are going to be companies that bring solutions to the great challenges we face. Now, how soon is this going to happen? The answer is it's happening now. You're already seeing trillions of dollars shifting in the business world to those who can achieve this. You're seeing specialist funds being set up in private equity, in venture capital, in public markets, in the bond market. The important thing for Israel to realize is that we have the ability to lead this movement in the same way that we have become a leader, a startup nation. The combination here of entrepreneurship, innovation, and the Jewish concept of tikkun olam, improving the world, is a unique combination. And we have the ability to use technology and innovation to improve lives here in Israel, reduce the economic gaps that we see, help those whom prosperity leaves behind to get a fair chance at moving ahead, unite the different tribes of our country, and work on the values that have been referred to earlier that underpin our democracy. We've spent more than 70 years ensuring that our state can be viable economically and militarily. Now we have to spend the next 75 years improving our society and the lives of our citizens and contributing to improving our world.
Hello, Ronnie, if I may call you Ronnie.
Please.
It is an honor to share the stage with you, and it's an honor to speak on the behalf of the Israeli Z generation. Thank you for your inspiring remarks. You presented an interesting and inspiring vision, and I may speak for us all who are eager to join the impact revolution. So we both have a few questions for you, and I would like to ask you, although tremendous effort is being invested in communicating to the consumers the corporate responsibilities and impact on the society and the environment, There's actually a decrease in the trust amongst consumers vis-a-vis big corporations. How do you see the connections between the consumers and big companies, and how can they restore that trust?
Excellent question. The third force, there was a change in values and the leaps in technology, answers your question. It's the force of transparency and the measurement of impact. The SEC, which is responsible for all financial regulation in the United States, has announced that it would like to introduce the measurement of all environmental impacts created by companies, including their supply chains, and have them published regularly alongside financial information. The organization responsible for regulating or standardizing financial accounting across the world has already established an international sustainability standards board to standardize the measurement of impacts. And it includes social as well as environmental impacts. So the answer is we have to bring similar transparency to impacts for companies that we brought to profits 90 years ago, when every company could pick its own accounting principles and there were no auditors to verify the numbers. We have to get to a place now where we can analyze in monetary terms and compare with sales and profits the impacts of companies, social and environmental. In my view, it's going to happen within 3 to 5 years. This is on your doorstep. Why? Because the work we've been doing at Harvard shows that the companies which are polluting more are worth less than their competitors. And if that's the case, then what do regulators have to do? They have to make sure that this stock price sensitive data reaches every investor at the same time on a comparable verified basis in order to maintain orderly markets. So it's on our doorstep. We should all be demanding it. Israel should be leading in it. Somebody was saying to me that they would like to bring to Israel the work on impact-weighted accounting, which Harvard has been doing, that they would like it to be carried out at the IDC. Let's do it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ronald. I'm going to be a little bit more aggressive. I'm going to use my best Israeli quality, which is chutzpah. According to Google, your net worth is 220 million pounds. So, of course, from your impressive parkour as the first venture capitalist in the UK. So my first question, if I may, is how are you impacting the global economy with your private capital? And secondly, what would you say to those who accuse the impact movement as a privileged people movement, as a privilege? Yeah.
So what am I doing? Well, I left Apex at the age of 60 to devote the next 20 years or more of my life, depending on how many God gives me, to work on social issues and the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. All my investments are impact-focused. Every venture that I have backed in Israel, and through Dynamic Loop Capital, we've backed 24 ventures, including the first woman to lead a unicorn, Einat Gez of Papaya Global, including companies like Optibus, which are in the software area managing public transport, but not just measuring growth and profit, measuring reduction in carbon emissions, waiting time for vulnerable commuters, reducing the number of hours that drivers work, reducing the number of accidents. And so I don't believe in investing in fossil fuels, not just because of the harm it does, but this is the message for everyone here and outside this hall, because actually it's a bad way to invest. You can give the fossil fuel industry 10 to 20 years before it's completely overtaken by clean energy. So invest in clean energy. So any entrepreneurs here with exciting ventures that are designed to change the world, find Tal or Johnny.
Thank you.
Thank you. This is just fascinating. So as a representative of the Israeli Gen Z, I would like to know what, in your opinion, is the Israeli Gen Z, the Israeli youth, role in reshaping the economy into an impact economy?
Entrepreneurs are leading, young entrepreneurs are leading this revolution, like the young entrepreneurs who led the tech revolution. Their elders thought it was a load of rubbish. How could a young entrepreneur, a dropout from university, overtake a company like IBM? You must be out of your mind. And what do we find? 30 years later, the leading companies of the world were created within the last 30 years. The same is going to be happening again. You can show real leadership, and your leadership will inspire our political leaders to understand impact, because if impact has been adopted by entrepreneurs and investors, governments and philanthropists haven't really started to adopt it.
Thank you. So, following Yael's important question, I would like to ask, is it possible for a young individual, let's call him Noam Firuz, to do well, like really well, like Sir Ronnie Cohen, well, by doing good?
Totally. Doing good and doing well is the formula for success in the future. If you want to attract the best talent, you won't attract them by offering them more options, more money, and polluting the atmosphere and employing child labor. Those days are over. You want to attract the best business talent in young people. You give them a goal that's bigger than themselves. You give them a role that enables them to fulfill their sense of mission, to bring an answer to the question of what the meaning of your lives are at your age. At my age, I can look back and try to ascribe meaning to my life. But at your stage in life, you have to find meaning. And that's what being an impact entrepreneur does. So if you want to attract talent, if you want to attract consumers, if you want to attract investors, bring impact to the core of your business model. So that the more impact you deliver, the more money you make. So many people in my generation thought that the right model was to make as much money as you can as you worked in your professional life. And then after you've been successful, to give that money away. It's no longer the case. In today's world, if you have the intention to be successful, you have the biggest opportunity to make the most money by doing good and doing well at the same time.
Thank you again for your insights and wisdom. Your vision and our action will pave the road to develop an impact economy in Israel. Thank you, Yael. Thank you, Ronnie.
Thank you, Noam.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.